Hey Saints, I wanted to go through something here. I'm just trying to make a couple of biblical observations and maybe set up a storyline that isn't been brought up, at least in all the stuff I've been reading, but I think it's possible, if not probable. And this has to do with Babylon, and I've done other videos where we went into Jeremiah 50:51 and Isaiah 13:14 and stuff, and showing that, when the end times Babylon is mentioned in those chapters, especially in Jeremiah, but also in Isaiah, it's in the land of the Chaldees, which puts it in Mesopotamia, puts it into Iraq, and it's really hard with that context to say that it's somewhere else, like the Vatican or the U.S. or whatever. It's also called the Great City. We'll take a look at a couple of the references here, but there's a bunch. And it's called the Golden City. And I don't want to make too much of that, but I actually suspect that it may not be a city exactly like, the cities here on Earth. Satan tries to rip off everything that God does. And when you look at the description of New Jerusalem with the streets of gold and all that, and even reports of people that have had those near-death experiences, what they see is a city of gold. New Jerusalem is a city of gold. So I sort of wonder here if the city isn't of extraterrestrial origin, or it's being built, to, let's say, compare with the New Jerusalem, because just face it, I mean, Satan and his angels, when they fell, their context of what heaven was supposed to be was probably New Jerusalem. I mean, they saw the golden city, and now in the Bible here we'll see a quick reference in Isaiah that Babylon, the Babylon of the end times, is called the Golden City. And so I think, we get one more sense that Satan's end time program, Babylon, is the Babylon in the land of Chaldees, in Iraq. It's a golden city. I'll actually speculate that its origin may be of extraterrestrial origin, or at least its builders potentially would be builders that the Antichrist brings with him. And I want to go down that path for a reason, but first let's get into the text here just a little bit. I want to show you a couple of things. So the first is here in Joel, and we get this reference here talking about the nation that's going to come upon Israel in Joel. And so, for a nation is to come upon my land, strong without number, whose teeth are the teeth of a lion, and he hath cheek teeth of a great lion. And I just want to show you this here, the nation. Here it's Goy, Goya. I don't know if that's like the Goyim, the Gentiles, but hence a Gentile, also figuratively a troop of animals or a flight of locusts, Gentile, heathen, nation, or people. So you get a little sense there. It's the heathens coming upon Israel. But they have something a little strange here. They have, I'll go back to the regular King James, whose teeth are the teeth of a lion, and he has cheek teeth of a great lion. And that association with the lion, if you remember, the symbol of Babylon was actually a lion with wings. And it's also the symbol used, I think it's in Daniel 7. So I wanted to make that tie there because I think this is the Babylonian horde that's coming, potentially in against Israel. And it goes down and makes a lot of comparisons there. Context, though, is, as it comes down, describes this alas for the day of the Lord is at hand. Destruction from the Almighty shall it come. And I just wanted to put that context, starting in Joel 1, that this army, it's an end times context. And if we move over into Joel 2, 4 through 11, the appearance of them, now this is the army being described, is of the appearance of horses and of horsemen, so shall they run. Like the noise of chariots on the tops of mountains shall they leap. Like the noise of a flame of fire that devoureth the stubble, as a strong people set in battle array. Before their face the people shall be much pained, all faces shall gather blackness. They shall run like mighty men. I just want to show you this here. It is Gibor. They shall run like mighty men. They shall climb the wall like men of war. They shall march every one on his ways, and they shall not break rank. Neither shall one of them thrust another. They shall walk every one in his path, and when they fall upon the sword, they shall not be wounded. Well, there's one more indication that, you know, they sound like super soldiers, don't they? They sound like, genetic modification or something here, because you fall on a sword and you're not wounded. Of course, they could be demonic, but it sure sounds like we're describing, a fleshly army because of the physical destruction that's occurring here. They shall run to and fro in the city, and they shall run upon the wall. They shall climb up upon the houses. They shall enter into the windows like a thief. The earth shall quake before them. The heavens shall tremble. The sun and the moon shall be dark, and the stars shall withdraw their shining. And the Lord shall utter his voice before his army. His camp is great. He is strong. For the day of the Lord is great and very terrible. Who can abide? So their day of the Lord again, surrounding the context of the description of this evil, non-human army, and a few references of Babylon there in chapter 1. I just want to keep pushing on this just a little bit because, again, any one of these passages, the context isn't perfectly clear. And so we're going to do this a little bit more by the weight of the scriptural evidence rather than, single passage reference. Verse 17, 18, and 31 here. Again, this is describing here an end times view. Now this is tricky because it's being done in symbolic language, but just listen to this and see what you see in this. They also went into hell with him who unto them that be slain with the sword, and they that were his arm, his strength, and dwelt under his shadow in the midst of the heathen. To whom art thou like in glory and greatness among the trees of Eden? Yet thou shalt be brought down with the trees of Eden unto the nether parts of the earth. Thou shalt lie in the midst of the uncircumcised, with them that be slain by the sword. This is Pharaoh and all his multitude, saith the Lord God. And I'll just give you my context. I think we're seeing in Ezekiel, especially in 31 here, the Antichrist being pictured. Now I think there's some past and present, but behold, the Assyrian was a cedar in Lebanon. And so we're using the symbolic language, the Assyrian, the Antichrist, a cedar in Lebanon, and yet we see here references to the trees of Eden and the roots being, or the branches in his trees being watered from the depths of the abyss. And then at the end here we see that he's going to go down to the pit of hell, him and his multitude. And so I just want to kind of put a point on the fact that we not only have this picturing of the Antichrist, and he's called the Assyrian, which that's the land of Babylon, was Assyria. He's going to be judged by God, and him and the trees of Eden, I'll just say the fallen ones that are with him get judged and sent into the pit, and they're lying with the uncircumcised, in the midst of the uncircumcised, which is, the heathen of the earth. This is a different set of people, and again, I'm not trying to overplay it, but just notice there's a difference in there. Now let's go into Jeremiah 50 and just take a look at a little bit more. Again, we're doing this on the weight of the scriptural evidence, because I think, when you look at imagery language, you sometimes go, well, it could be misinterpreted, right? Just a couple more now. Jeremiah 50 is definitely, again, judgment against Babylon, and there's a before and after to this as well, because in the time of Jeremiah, right, he's talking about a judgment that's going to happen, or he's predicting or forecasting the judgment that's going to happen against Jerusalem and Nebuchadnezzar. But again, there's a latter days a cast to this whole thing in Jeremiah 50 and 51, and Chuck Missler, for instance, puts 50 and 51 together with Isaiah 13 and 14 and Revelation 17 and 18, talking or picturing the end times Babylon. And so I agree with that, because there's too many references here of the way it's destroyed, like Sodom and Gomorrah, which is not the way the ancient Babylon degraded over time. It wasn't destroyed in a day. And so there's all sorts of near, far prophetic looks going on about Babylon, but there's definitely an end times Babylon that's being referenced here in 50 and 51. And so, in verse 27 there, slay all her bullocks, let them go down to the slaughter. Woe unto them, for their day has come, the time of their visitation. And again, bullock, it could just be a bull, but this is an interesting reference. Babylon has her bullocks. And let's just take a look again at what that is. Breaking forth wild in strength. Okay, and that's how they get the bull or ox. But I think here in the reference, it's like Jesus when he was on the cross. I think he talked about the bulls of Bashan surrounding him. I really think this is a spiritual reference here in this case to this same, demonic infilled horde that is going to go down to the slaughter, just like we read there in Ezekiel 31. And again, I know it's imagery language, but it's sitting right here with the destruction of the end times Babylon. And so, I don't really think the Lord was concerned about judging a bunch of cows in a field that happen to be near the end times city of Babylon. I think this is, in reference to those, I'll say demonic Nephilim horde that come with the Antichrist. That's really what I think is being pictured here. And then in 30, therefore shall all her young men fall in the street, and all her men of war shall be cut off in that day, saith the Lord. And so there again, you kind of juxtapose verse 27 unto 30, and we see that the bullocks are now being called young men. And that's where I'm getting the context for some of this interpretation too. And then just a quick peek here at 36. A sword is upon the liars, and they shall dote. A sword is upon her mighty men, and they shall be dismayed. And again, we've got mighty men here. It's Gabor. And Gabor is kind of a tough one in the Bible, because it's often or frequently associated with the passages that describe the Nephilim or the Raphaim. But it isn't always. It can just be warriors. It doesn't have to be Nephilim. So again, we're doing this on the weight of the scriptural evidence that seems to be pointing this way. And so, there's yet again more references to, they're non-human. They're called these bulls, and yet they're, physically they're not just spiritual entities, because they were called the young men uh, down below in that passage. And I'm going to keep going here. I'm sorry if I'm drawing out a point, but I want you guys to see the same thing I'm seeing, because I think it has implications for what we're seeing right now today in Iraq, and that's where this, I think goes. So let's go to Jeremiah 51, 29 to 30. And the land shall tremble and sorrow, for every purpose of the Lord shall be performed against Babylon, to make the land of Babylon a desolation without inhabitant. Hang on a second here. The mighty men of Babylon have forborne to fight. They have remained in their holds. Their might hath failed. They become as women. They have burned her dwelling places. Her bars are broken. And this is as they see the judgment coming against Babylon. The mighty men of Babylon have forborne to fight. And there you go. It's Gabor again. And so again, it's just the weight of this is what I'm trying to put together. 56 and 57. 56 says, because the spoiler is come upon her, even upon Babylon, her mighty men, and yes, that's Gabor again, are taken, every one of their bows is broken, for the Lord God of recompense shall surely requite. And I will make drunk her princes and her wise men, and her captains and her rulers, and her mighty men, and they shall sleep a perpetual sleep and not wake, saith the King, whose name is the Lord of hosts. And there you go. That's, the reference to the second coming here, and what God's going to do to the city of Babylon. And that's what we see here in the end times. Babylon is it's destroyed. We'll see it in Revelation 18 here in a minute. Let me just finish off this little section here with Isaiah 14. Verses 15 to 22. Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. And that's exactly the language we had in Ezekiel 31. They that see thee shall narrowly look upon thee and consider thee, saying, is this the man that made the earth to tremble, that did shake the kingdoms? See, and here's where we get sort of the Antichrist reference. That made the world as a wilderness, and destroyed the cities thereof, and opened not the houses of his prisoners. All the kings of the nations, even all of them, lie in glory, every one in his own house. But thou art cast out thy grave like an abominable branch, and the raiment of those that are slain, thrust through with the sword, that go down to the stones of the pit, as the carcass is trodden under feet. Thou shalt not be joined with them in burial, because thou hast destroyed thy land and slain thy people. The seed of evildoers shall never be renowned. And this seed, we have that reference in the Proto-Evangelium, back in Genesis. Is it 3, the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent? And here we've got the seed reference again. Prepare slaughter for his children, for the iniquity of their fathers, that they do not rise, nor possess the land, nor fill the face of the world with cities. For I will rise up again, saith the Lord of hosts, and cut off from Babylon the name and remnant and son and nephew. And so there, I think, how many times we have to see this, but we see this seed of the Antichrist, the seed of the evil doer, and here it's, they're called his children. So hopefully you guys think that's enough there to multiple references to the seed of the Antichrist, the Assyrian, and their mighty men, and the context appears to not necessarily be human. Joel 1:6 there, and a couple of those other places I read to you. And so I'm just going to call them the Nephilim demonic horde that come with the Antichrist. And I just want to take a quick peek here in verse 4 of Isaiah 14. Thou shalt take up the proverb against the king of Babylon, and how the oppressor has ceased, the golden city has ceased. And I thought that was interesting too, because here's where we kind of see that the city of Babylon is a golden city. Now that just could mean it's rich and decked out, and we see a lot more of that in Revelation 18. But I actually kind of wonder here again, if Satan's trying to rip off everything that the Lord is doing. We know from descriptions there in Revelation 20 and 21 and other places that the New Jerusalem is a city, the streets are of gold, and like I say, I'm wondering here if the end times Babylon isn't either of extraterrestrial or extra-dimensional architecture, or if literally the city itself is brought from some other place or dimension. It would match, we see the New Jerusalem comes down out of heaven at the end of Revelation there. It would sort of match that, Satan trying to rip this off by bringing his city down out of heaven. And let me just, last verses here, let's look at Revelation 18. And then we'll close with a point that I think may be plausible. Revelation 18, again talking about Babylon after it had been destroyed, standing afar off, fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, the great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour thy judgment has come. And so again, we're talking about a specific city and not a country like the United States or something like that. And I think here here's the point I want to make is we see the architecture, from Genesis 6, the Nephilim were there before the flood and after. And if you look at, the architecture that is typically ascribed to the Nephilim, Baalbek, for instance, all these different sites of the pyramids have been built all over the world, some of them under the oceans, yet they're the megalithic structures. These Nephilim, at least some subset of them, were great architects and builders. I mean, a lot of speculation about the Pyramid of Giza. How could something that large have such little variation? The building techniques were pretty astonishing that went into something like that, and we don't know who built it, and so I can't say it was the Nephilim, but Baalbek certainly probably was, and some of these other cities like in South America that have been found now certainly appear to be built by at least or designed by something that was non-human, and of course the Paraka skulls would point that way as well. Some of the bodies have been dug up, appear to be Nephilim that have designed some of these cities. So is the end times Babylon need to be there, being built up over the years, for instance, for the true end times to come? And this is the point I want to make, is I literally think that end times Babylon could be from extra-dimensional, extraterrestrial origin, just like New Jerusalem is coming down from heaven out of the clouds in the end of days. This, I think, is Satan's plan, is he's going to bring components of his golden city from wherever, the second heaven that the Antichrist comes down to. And we see that he comes with his demonic Nephilim horde. Look at all these passages we went through. And if we look at the history, those Nephilim, before the flood and after, they were great architects and builders. Matter of fact, the Masons point themselves back, all the way to the original Tower of Babel, unfortunately, and before, and they claim to be, the master builders, and that is, so I don't see any problem with the fact that right now, the ancient city of Babylon is just a few ceremonial buildings that are sitting there in the middle of a desert. I have no problem seeing this city being erected in a short amount of time that all the nation's wealth flow to. And Chuck Missler actually makes this point too in Zechariah 5, I think, that imagery of the woman being put into the ephod with the lead um, talent over her being brought into the land of Shinar. Uh, that sure looks like it's picturing the spiritual with the woman as well as an ephod, a size measurement, and the talent, a weight measurement of commerce being brought into the land of Shinar. And I think, to me, that could be imaging what we're talking about here is a sudden and sort of quick development that brings into the land of Shinar the end times religious system and the end times commerce system. So I know there's people out there that are saying, oh, there's no Babylon in the desert, there's no great city, the hub of commerce isn't there, so it's somewhere else. It's New York, it's Paris, it's Vatican. I think what we see in the text here is the Antichrist and his Nephilim demonic horde having a golden city, these history being that they're architects and builders of the nth degree, that the Masons, aspire to have the arcane ancient knowledge that these Nephilim horde had. And so can you see a city coming from the clouds like the New Jerusalem being a ripoff of what the Lord's going to do, or a city popping up almost overnight in terms of construction, a golden city as described by the Bible? I think this can happen in a very short span of time because it's part of, in my mind, the history of what we see in the days of Noah. What were these Nephilim capable of building-wise? And what's the Antichrist viewed as? He's viewed as coming suddenly upon the earth, and from the passages we saw, he comes with a demonic horde. So I think these go as a package. I'm not waiting for Babylon to be built over a couple of decades for it to be the hub of commerce of the world before the end times comes. I think the church leaves and the tribulation begins, and then what we see is the sudden arrival of the Antichrist with his Nephilim horde. And I have no problem seeing their golden city arising literally, overnight in the desert of Shinar. And I brought this forward in a video just a couple days ago, but ISIS right now just blew up the city of Nimrud and has been destroying all the artifacts out of the ancient city of Nineveh, today's Mosul. I think they're scrubbing the land right now, so it's harder to connect that ancient Nimrod and his Nephilim demonic offspring to the end times version of it. I think they're scrubbing the land there in ancient references to the original Nimrod so that the deception is complete when he shows up here in the future. So I'll leave you with that, Saints, a little bit of a study tonight. I hope that was at least plausible in your mind. Leave me some comments below. But I'm not waiting for the end times Babylon to be built before I think the end times comes. I think the end times comes and the city is built just the way very likely the third temple is going to be built, and in a short amount of time. I think the end times Babylon is going to be built out literally, probably overnight or within a year or two. And there's where I'm at. Thanks, Saints, and God bless you. Hopefully we'll see you on the next one.